Championship Edition. I love it. Yeah, you're 2023 NBA Finals champions, Denver Nuggets. We got Adam Monez, DNVR. We got Matt Moore. Man, I can't wait to hear all these thoughts. I can't wait. And then we got Ryan Blackburn. Man, I'm trying to tell y'all, we have been waiting all year for this moment. We talked about this last offseason. What do the Denver Nuggets have to do to win a ring? And then they get it done. And matter of fact, y'all, it's just the second record straight. It wasn't their offense that got it done. It was elite defensive play started by the man in the middle. But that's a whole other discussion we're going to get to in a minute. Y'all, what's going on? How y'all feeling today?
Man, I'm feeling so much better now that I heard that introduction. Swipa got me. All those old feelings, they came rushing back.
Adam got drunk just from hearing that, actually. Took him right back to being drunk for a solid week.
Oh man, we're the traveling Wilburys. Is that what this is?
That is, baby. That's right.
I had to do my research. I'm somebody in that band, but no, we're hyped, man. It's been great, and I mean, I thought that we were gonna get a little bit of a rest here, but there ain't no rest for the wicked, guys.
Right. Y'all, so we got a bunch to get into. We're going to talk about the parade, talk about your favorite drunk moment of the parade. We're going to talk about our favorite highlight from the playoff series, all kind of stuff. But, y'all, we just got some very, very recent updates from Woj, Sham. The Denver Nuggets just made a trade with the Indiana Pacers, giving away their 2024 first-round pick. They get this year's 29th first-round pick, the second-round pick at the 32nd slot, and they still have the 37th overall pick in the second round as well. So we're going to go to the expert, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Ryan Blackburn. Ryan, can you just give us your general ideas on the trade and then maybe even some of the players you think the Nuggets might be targeting right here?
Yeah, so first and foremost, Denver had made a move previously during the finals that nobody talked about, that it was they're trading for a 2024 first-round pick that they then basically used to move into the first round of this draft. They now have the 29th, the 32nd, and the 37th pick. They sent their 40th pick that they had previously had along with that 2024 first in order to go get that to Indiana. And it makes sense that they're doing that, I think, because they're trying to get cheap contributors for this upcoming season. They know how expensive this roster is going to be. Whether they can bring back Bruce Brown or not, they know that they're going to need to add a whole bunch of guys in order to stay under that second apron tax threshold that I think everybody's talking about. So that's something that you're going to have to worry about for sure if you're a Nuggets fan. But the hope with this is that Calvin Booth, he's got something cooking. He's got a lot of options here where you can go veteran contributors or you could add some rookies in. And I think Denver's had some success, obviously, with Christian Brown. They added Peyton Watson as a guy that they think could really be a contributor next year. But most important thing for Denver is that they could add a player like Jaime Jaquez Jr. from UCLA or Andre Jackson from UConn or City Sissoko.
By the way, Jackson, that is every year there's the guy that the entire fan base rallies behind. And that this year it's that guy. Now, it's not always the right guy. Jaden Springer was that guy, I believe, 2 years ago. Everybody wanted Jaden Springer. So it doesn't mean anything, but whenever I ask anyone, that's like the number one guy they all mention. And it might be because they were planning on having the 40th pick only, so maybe people were setting their sights a little lower.
There's definitely a possibility. I mean, Jackson, he averaged 6 points a game. So, and he did it on a championship contender. And so, they won the title. The UConn won the title, and he played there for 3 years and played a role. So maybe that's part of it, but you could also get Julian Strother from Gonzaga, who hit a big shot over UCLA in the tournament. Jordan Walsh is a name that people talk about as a versatile veteran wing big contributor who could play a small ball 5 role maybe. There's a lot of guys that you could throw out there. Colby Jones is a guy that my guy CT Fazio has at the top of his board from Xavier. There's players that they can go get, and especially in that 25 to 35 range that they now have 2 extra picks in, they can definitely find some players that could contribute as soon as this year. You probably don't want to have those guys contribute, but that's what Calvin Booth is doing. So we'll see what they ultimately get, but that's where their minds are at.
Yeah, so I'm actually really excited about this. There's a lot of potential with some things they can do around that range. And then maybe if they don't even keep all the picks, Ryan, like maybe there's some things they could do as well. But Matt, Adam, beyond just the specifics about this year's draft, what, if you at all do what do you like about the direction the front office is taking as we enter into this iteration of the Nikola Jokic, Michael Malone, and Jamal Murray era of the Denver Nuggets?
I'll go first on this one, Matt. The thing about it, we only have one offseason and one trade deadline of Calvin Booth. Like we project a lot onto 2 data points about what kind of guy he is. This is the 3rd data point that will give okay, now we can draw a straight line with some confidence to say what is he doing. This is aggressive. Both moves are aggressive. And I think you look at it now and you say, okay, last year, the guys that they went out and got and added to the team, the trade of KCP, even though at the time, it's funny to think now, but at the time, there were people out there that said, oh, it's a salary dump, or, oh, that's a lot to give up for KCP. In hindsight, no question it was the best move, but it was aggressive. Then you go to the trade deadline, got rid of Bones for almost nothing. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. They bring in Thomas Bryant, they do these things. But if you really just look at in a vacuum value, that was an aggressive move in that it was a belief that there was such a thing as addition by subtraction, and he was 100% right about it. Then today, and really the last 2 weeks between these 2 moves, one, Ryan, you said nobody was talking about it. It was the NBA Finals. Yeah. Of course nobody was talking about it.
Right.
It was a rare example of a team in the finals making a trade. So that is hyper aggressive. But I think it gives us an idea that we can say with confidence now that Calvin Booth is not a guy. He is more like a Pat Riley, a guy that's not going to make these long-term, okay, well, let's buy some lottery tickets, see what happens. No, he's a guy that thinks next year, we got to win next year. What gives us the best chance? And yes, you'll have an eye towards the future. I mean, picking up draft picks is also a long-term play, but it's very clear that the Nuggets, it was clear when they made the trade during the finals. It was made clear when Michael Malone drunkenly declared all week long, we're going for a dynasty, not one. It is clear now with these moves that the Nuggets look at this and say, we're the best team. Nobody really seems close to us, and we need to make hay while the sun is shining. And that's what this trade to me represents. And to be honest with you, I don't know if it's the last move they make today and tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny the Heat comparison just because the Heat are notorious for basically not valuing picks and always moving them. I get the mindset, though, of you need to try and compete now. And that's the window that Denver's in. Once it becomes the case where it's not, I think, Booth may approach things differently. I think also a lot of this is the realities of the CBA. That to me is a big part of this is when you have $500 million in the starting lineup, you're just going to lose a lot of your opportunity to build on the margins. And so you need to have a pipeline of guys. And this is honestly, instead of maybe modeling an approach for who is good at that, it's maybe better to look at who's failed at that. And Milwaukee, I think, is a good example of a team that's really failed at that. They've kept going to these veterans over and over and over again. And I think that Calvin understood the need for veterans this season. And I'm sure some of those veterans will still be around next season. But over the course of time, if you want to compete, you have to have guys stepping into roles as other guys become less playable. Reggie Jackson was technically in the rotation at the end of the regular season. And that clearly wasn't the case. And you need more options. Denver got through this playoff run without significant injuries. And that's unlikely to occur again. You need to have guys that can step into those roles and play more. And with the new CBA, it's more important than ever, I think, to have those guys on cost controlled contracts that you can manage over time. So it's a really smart example of that. Now, I'll say this, you got to be cautious because honestly, Golden State under a less restrictive CBA still took this approach in many years. And we did the whole thing of oh my God, I can't believe that they got Jordan Bell, oh my God, they let the Warriors get Jordan Bell.
That is actually that's a throwback, man. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
you're right. That was an era. Jordan Bell was good for about 2 seconds though, Matt, to be fair.
So and Bulls fans were killing them for giving up that pick. So it's just kind of a reminder that when you're picking this late, they're not all going to be hits. And maybe that's a reason why you want more Adam kind of tweeted that these are all in a cluster there between 25 and 40. And so you've got this little range here of being able to, they can move up if they want to. I don't know how many rotation guys are going to be available for that late of a pick in this draft. But also the other thing I will say, next year's draft is bad. Like everyone's like, you want to get out of that draft. And so like there's now that Adam's kind of shaking his head, that could change entirely in a year. Like I don't like to project these things out because we'll think that it's a weak draft and it turns out great, etc. But
also when people say weak, it usually means is the top player a star. And this year it's Wemby, who's like the most hyped prospect in 20 years. So it's a great draft. And next year it might be a crappy top heavy draft, but it might be one that has good players in the 20s. It's just people never talk about a good draft as in, oh, it's really good in the second round.
I mean, specifically the guys that I would talk about in that context are the guys that only really care about the deep cuts. That's the draft obsessives. But again, who knows? But I do think that a lot of this just gets into like, how do you extend the lifeline? How do you make sure that you don't run into a situation like Milwaukee where you're like, man, they got like 3 dudes. Like, how do you avoid that? And the answer probably is managing the draft well.
So I love your point about Milwaukee, Matt, because I actually think if you look at the Nuggets this year, they split the difference. They went with 3 rookies, or actually we could say over the last 2 years, 3 young players when you go to Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Colin, who got hurt, and even a Zeke Naji, who's still a young player, and one of those guys played. It was Christian Brown. And then he went with 3 veterans, Ish Smith, Jeff Green, and DeAndre Jordan, and one of those guys played. So he really brought in 3 rookies, 3 vets of the last 2 years, and one from each camp sort of played. And I kind of think it's going to be the same thing this year. I would be surprised if they use all 3 picks. You don't want to get into the Tim Conley problem where you end up having your end of bench is like 8 guys that are all projects. You probably want to consolidate that a little bit, but there is a chance that it's like, hey, you take 2 players there, you bring back 1 or 2 of the vets you have, you add 1 or 2 other vets, and you let them all fight it out, knowing that you're probably going to get 1 young player, one veteran there. And by the way, Peyton Watson, I think, should be considered a rookie this year because last year was a redshirt year for all intents and purposes. So I would be very surprised if Michael Malone tries to defend his NBA championship playing heavy minutes of Christian Brown, a second-year player, Peyton Watson, a first-year player effectively, and another rookie, a first-year player. 3 guys that are all 2 years of experience or less. I'd just be a little bit surprised by that, especially if that was the plan from day one.
Yeah, there's no doubt that they're going to mix and match. They could also draft somebody and stash them with that other second-round pick that they have. It's going to be interesting. It's all going to come back to Bruce Brown in all likelihood, just whether they can like really base it off of that and whether they could add somebody there. If they don't get him, they'll probably add somebody with the taxpayer MLE. And I know we're going to talk about that, but they will have options. Most of that is like most of what we're talking about though is at the end of the bench. It's they have the bulk of their rotation. They've got their 5 starters locked up. Christian Brown, is going to be there. They're probably going to play Peyton Watson a little bit, but they'll probably also play either Vlatko or Zeke, and those guys will have it. And then they'll bring back a couple of guys that they already had. So what we're really talking about here is filling out spots 9 through 12, basically, with versatile players that you hope can really be added as Swipa disappears. But we will just have to see whether they can do that or not.
Oh. And I'm curious for Swipa, Kamagate, everybody was hyping him up, and I was a little slow to hype him just because we hadn't seen him. And now he signs a 2-year deal. Everybody kept saying next year Kamagate is going to come in and be the backup big. And now it looks like he might never come over. And if he does, it's clearly not going to be for a minute. I kind of feel the same way about Peyton Watson. And I hate to say this because I really want him to work out. I like everything about what he represents. Can we really evaluate Peyton Watson right now with any kind of certainty? And I think everybody is penciling him in as like next year the bench is going to be Christian, it's going to be Peyton, and I'm like, guys, we don't know, man. That's an unproven player, and you don't want to get into a situation where you just penciled him in, and it's like, hey, now it's an anchor. So I just pumped the brakes on Peyton Watson, even though I like him and believe in him. The belief is more just that, belief, than it is knowledge at the moment because we haven't seen him.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think that there's been – and I kind of feel the same way about the draft stuff. Like, I don't want to be how can I put this? I don't want to be the caricature that Adam Austin suggests that I am of like just being negative on moments of hype. But I am just kind of like, look, guys, this is still like the 29th pick. Like the odds of this guy being a rotation guy are low. Like there's a much larger chance that he is not an NBA player than he is a rotation guy. There's a larger chance that he's a rotation guy, then like he never plays a single second in the NBA because he's a first round pick. But I do think that some of this gets into like the question of how to manage those expectations. But like it's fine to be excited because the possibility is there. And if Calvin, like if you think that like Christian Brown was obviously a hit, if you think that Peyton Watson is a hit, which it's fair, I think, to have some level of like, well, we'll see, but still be like, but the returns early were good, and then be like, he's proven 2 hits, 2 out of 2. So, if he hits 3 out of 3, look how good this can be. I tend to be like, well, there's a little bit more variance there, I think, included, but I think there's still a good chance of it being successful.
Right. Well, I don't know what just happened, but apparently my camera decided to go off randomly. But whatever. Welcome back, y'all. So
we've done musical chairs here in terms of where we're actually sitting on the camera, so that's pretty funny.
Yeah, I apologize, y'all. But yeah, I think what's interesting about this is what I do love, Adam. So this is back before I was ever Swipa. I was just a regular old person. Used to love watching DNVR and watching Ryan and hearing his podcast, watching Matt, the Chiefs fan go off about stuff. And Adam, you used to say all the time that the Nuggets really with Jokic, just athletes, long athletes that can get to the rim, that can cut, that can play defense, and that have high IQs. And that seems to be the approach so far from Calvin. If you look at Ismail Kamagate, 6'11", great athlete, DPOY level player in Paris, obviously. Then you got Peyton Watson at 6'7", great measurable, similar to Herb Jones. And then on top of that, you have Christian Brown. And it seems that we might be angling towards that again. So if that's Calvin Booth's philosophy, and we're saying, look, we got Murray, you got MPJ, you got Gordon, and you got Jokic. Let's just put some defenders around them and see what they can do. So if that's what it is, I love it.
Well, that's what's funny is, in years past, under Tim Conley, there was a type, but there still was a variety to it where it's like, okay, who are they going to take? I almost feel like this year it's easier to predict because Cal clearly has a type that is a more narrowly defined type. Like they're not going to take Bol, the Bol of this draft. They're not going to take the Bones Highland of this draft. You can just go ahead and mark those guys off the board because I would be shocked if they took that type of guy. To your point, they're going to be big, they're going to be athletic, and they're going to be guys that project to be good team players, good role players or what have you. So I think in that way, this is again though why I would be surprised if they used all 3 picks. But nonetheless, I think the type of guy they're going to bring in.
Also important to talk about just how smart the guys are that they're going to bring. Like that they have to pick things up quickly in this system, and that's one thing that they talked about. That's one thing actually that I think Cal talked about with you guys on the DNVR show about how smart Peyton Watson was and how he was able to like bring things back and be able to like reiterate different things in scouting reports and whatnot. And Christian Brown obviously has plenty of experience, so that's something that they're going to value. They want guys that can pick things up very quickly. Usually upperclassmen is probably going to be that. And I'm really hoping to see some interesting players that they can add in this draft, because I do think that there are enough guys that keeping things fresh and keeping things turning over is a really important aspect of any contender. And when you let things get too stale, then it's less fun. So it was a great thing that they added DeAndre Jordan for that reason. It was a great thing that they added Peyton Watson and Christian Brown for that reason. So lots of reasons, I think, to think that Denver will continue the same formula going forward.
And also, so there's some more updates. We're going to get to Bruce Brown here in a second, but Keith Smith just dropped the NBA salary cap information as well. The cap is going to be $136 million. The tax is going to be $165 million. First tax apron is going to be $172. And then the second tax apron is going to be $182.5. So $2 million higher in the cap, about $3 million higher on the tax and on the aprons and such. So again,
that's a big deal. That's actually a big deal for Denver, because I didn't know if they would be able to afford both bringing back Bruce Brown and maybe also adding somebody else. But I think they honestly can, and they might have a little bit of flexibility to add Jeff Green if they want to give him more than the minimum now. Like that's something that they can talk about. But he would have been one of the guys, Jeff Green would have probably been one of the guys that could be squeezed in some of these other conversations of bringing back the same cast of characters. So that's important. And it's a small detail, but hopefully it gives Denver the added flexibility that they need.
Let's talk Bruce Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Bruce Brown, he just declined his player option. He was projected to make about $6.8 million. Obviously, he deserves a lot more than that. They got him an original, a 2-year deal with a player option on the second year for $13 million. And so right now, the Denver Nuggets, if they are able to re-sign him, can offer him up to a $7.8 million extension for 1 year. Then he can have another player option attached to that. And then there's some more things that can happen after that for the Bobby Portis-esque deal. But just general thoughts. Then, Adam, love to hear from you to start this, and go to Ryan, go to Matt. But what do you think about the Bruce Brown situation? Obviously, we had comments from Coach Michael Malone at the parade. Bruce Brown has seemed to hint that he wants to come back. What are your initial thoughts on this?
You want me to go first? I mean, I'm just with Bruce. I never thought he was coming back. So the fact that there's even this chance of it, maybe they do the one more deal and then try to do a longer term thing. Look, I love Bruce Brown. To me, he is an all-time Nugget. Like, he gets to go down in lore as a guy we will always remember, despite the fact that he only played 1 year. If he re-ups, he becomes even more of a legend, which is cool for us. But does it make sense for Bruce? Like, he's already a legend. What more is there needed to be accomplished here? Maybe running it back. So I kind of have always just counted him out. But you know what? We'll just wait and see. We'll wait and see what happens. The phrasing, by the way, from Woj today, though, did send like Woj's phrasing is always interesting. It's almost as interesting to me as the tweets themselves, because we all know Woj is an information transactor, right? So he's just sharing things. And the phrasing from him today was, as the Nuggets prepare for possibility of losing Bruce Brown in free agency, ... the trade. And I just read that and I go, that didn't come from Woj, I don't think. I mean, maybe that's part of his interpreting, okay, they're expecting him to walk or to go away. So that's the only detail of that I find interesting.
Right.
Yeah, the math on this is basically anybody can offer Bruce Brown $12.2 million for the MLE if they're not a tax-paying team. 12.2, and then having 3 guaranteed years beyond that gets you to about 54 million of guaranteed money that Bruce Brown would be leaving on the table if he were to come back to Denver. And if he signs for a 7.8 million contract for 1 year, then he runs the risk of sustaining a major injury, not getting the payday that he hopes for. He hasn't made a ton of money in his career as of yet, and this is a big chance for him that he would be taking if he didn't come back, or if he did. And there's a lot, I think, that the Nuggets, it's wishful thinking to want Bruce Brown back, because he'd be taking so much less money than he actually deserves than he would probably be getting offered on the table. The other thing, though, is that maybe teams don't offer him. Maybe this is a situation where they actually don't. Kind of like what he was talking about last year. I sort of think that that's talking out of the other side of his mouth on that one, but I do think that's maybe there's a chance that the teams that he's getting offers from, like a San Antonio or a Houston or a Charlotte or teams like that are offering him actual money, maybe those teams are just teams that he doesn't want to, he has no chance to compete for a championship for. So we'll see what his priorities are and whether he is willing to put that risk up. But if I were him, I would not. I would sign the guaranteed contract.
I just don't think we should have expectations either way. I think that's the biggest thing. I think if you're a Nuggets fan, you should not be like, but he said he was coming back. Yeah, okay, cool. Somebody was like, but he's not going to have lied to 750,000 to us. Yeah, well, guess what? He's set to make about 7 times what your money. If you put $7 per person of that, that's what it probably matters a little bit more.
Also, he never lied. He just asked, should I come back?
Should I come back?
Right. Yeah. The other thing here is, so there's 2 things about this. One, the numbers I'm hearing for some of these guys are predictably pretty wild. Like the number that's being asked, and he may not get this, but like Kyle Kuzma is targeting 30. That's what he's targeting per year. Right. On the other side of that, I have asked around and haven't heard anything on Bruce Brown. There is not like this team's interested. Like they've already put this number out. Like I have some things that have been offered on the table for various guys that I can't talk about because I haven't nailed it down firm enough. But those numbers are out there floating in the ether, and Bruce Brown is not one of them. And so and I also say perception is a big part of this. If you're just I think he's going back to Denver, so why are we going to waste time on pursuing him if we're just going to get screwed by him coming back? that does wind up impacting guys' decisions. Like that will wind up. Some front offices are just like, I'm not gonna waste my time. It's different when it's a restricted free agent, like it is with Austin Reeves, where teams are just like, we're not gonna waste our time. Like Austin Reeves is gonna go back to the Lakers on a ridiculous number because everyone is just like, I'm not gonna waste my time putting it. Like I'm not gonna tie up my cap space for 3 days in an offer sheet just for the Lakers to match because they have to.
Swipa, I think the more interesting question though is, can the Nuggets win it without him? I mean, that seems like an obvious yes, just because you could replace him. But like, how much harder does it make it to win without him? And do you feel like they can replace him in free agency / the draft?
Well, so I'll say this. I think one thing is, obviously they can. But I think of Bruce, like similar to how the Warriors functioned with Iguodala and with Sean Livingston, maybe more Sean Livingston. I just think Sean added such a dynamic part of their offense and their defense to everything they did. I mean, they had a 6'7" point guard, Adam, where they could put on the court at any point in time. Those pull-up twos, mid-range were lethal. The post-up game was lethal. But defensively, when they had him and Clay and Draymond and everybody on the court, they just became a force. So I think Bruce could fit in a similar prototype. But for Bruce's sake, I hope he gets as much money as he can. Obviously, this is a very short window for his career. Honestly, I would love to see him play next to, like, again, non-Nuggets fan for, like, the Pacers, next to, like, Halliburton or something like that. Like, just, like, being in a situation where he could help a team that's kind of come on the up and up play really well. Like, I think he'd be great there. But I think the thing is, and the question I ask myself, Adam, is, could Bobby Portis had a very similar trajectory, and obviously you're very aware of that. He took two basically very small deals, took an MLE, and then rescinded the second year. On the third year, he could have been with the Bucks, and then re-signed that 4-year deal. Then I think he got like 52 or something at that point in time. So ostensibly, Bruce could have a 4-year extension after this year if he takes it, which would then bring Ryan. If he took this year and then signed a 4-year, the most he could make is approximately like $62 million over the course of a 5-year period, roughly. So that's still a very good chunk of change. Now you got to imagine there would be some, behind the scenes handshaking that would have to happen for that to take place. But I mean, how much is winning? He said that money is not the most important thing. And if the Nuggets can situate him to make a lot of money, be in a great environment. And again, Adam, you talked about this. When he left the Nets and he came to Denver, one of the things he highlighted was the culture, just the team. Like, he enjoys being in Denver. So again, I don't have expectations that he will resign. I can definitely see a path that he does, but ultimately the Denver Nuggets can win. But I think there are some options out there, but I can't say any of them are going to be as good as Bruce might be, at least ideally.
Like the biggest point being is that he could either lock in the guaranteed money now and save the hemming and hawing, and like the Bobby Portis deal, especially, like I think it was kind of criticized when it actually came out that the 4-year MLE deal that they basically signed him to, because he was not, it wasn't perfect. It certainly wasn't perfect on that front. If Denver sees Bruce have a major injury for somebody who is as athletic as he is, and then he decide, then you're like, okay, you're put in a really tough position. Do we follow through on this promise that we made, or and do something that's worse for our team, or do we go back on that promise and make a big issue about it? Right. So these things are messy. They're gross, and I think that one of the reasons why Bruce might avoid this altogether and just get that guaranteed money is to not be put into that position just in case something were to happen.
Yeah. I mean, look, my thing is just like, don't put Calvin in a position to hurt you. Yeah. Like that would be my thing. It's just like, Calvin's got a responsibility to the organization, and this is a cutthroat business. Mm-hmm. There's 30 of these teams, and you're competing with 30 other teams, and every dollar counts and every advantage counts. And this is why teams obsess over trying to gain any advantage that they can, because of how hyper competitive it is. And goodwill, I think, is always like, it's a better way to approach business, but there are limits. And I just think that, like, if you have the opportunity, it's very important, especially with where he's at in his career age-wise. Like, there are only so many opportunities more to get a big money contract. So this is all shoulds. Like, it's up to Bruce. Bruce gets to make that decision. We'll see what he does. I think Adam asked the question about how much it impacts them. Somebody said in the chat 10%. That probably is about accurate. Like, it gets about like 10 to 15% harder for them to repeat if Bruce is gone. You lose ball handling. You lose deep. You like 5%.
No, I said 16-5. 10% moves it from 4 losses to 5 losses.
Sure. And so what?
Matt wants no fun. None of the fun.
It was really cool. Now we get to talk about celebrating the championship and how they went 16-4, and now
I think it's actually a really pretty interesting question, right? Because we're like, I think it's a completely valid point, but like they went 16-4, which is a dominant run, and the argument made from other fan bases that are hurt because their team didn't lose, like that's the biggest part of it, is like how close some of those margins were in some of those games. So like a fair question is like, okay, if they had tight games that they won dominantly in terms of record, and you lose Bruce, what do those margins look like?
Right.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And like Bruce made big plays in the last game of the actual season. Like it was a really big deal. So it's going to be tough to replace, but Denver can do it. It's not fully like the Jonathan Simmons San Antonio Spurs situation that I remember very vividly of like, hey, you're just going to commit to the guys that you have. Like Bruce is way better than him and way
Didn't
more
he get 20
valuable
mil?
to Denver. Simmons, it was like a 3-year, $27 million contract or something like that. But like the most important thing is Denver can do it. It will be harder, like you're talking about. And I think Denver's preparing for that. And that's one of the reasons why they've made as many trades as they have of late.
Right. Well, that's enough of the non-fun section of the whole show. But y'all, again, just a reminder, it's been a long time. The Denver Nuggets won the NBA championship. And they just had a parade last week as well. And y'all, they did it, as you all said. They went 16-4, which is one of the best records in the last 30 years of the NBA as well. And also, I think on the last 5 teams that have done it, like the Warriors, the San Antonio Spurs, and then obviously you had, I think the Heat might have done that one time. Can't remember. They all had top 10 all-time NBA players, which is a whole other discussion I imagine we'll get into over the next couple of years. But, yeah, I mean, really just like what are just some of your favorite moments from this playoff run as you've looked back and they played versus the Wolves, versus the Suns, versus the Lakers in the closest sweep in NBA history, and versus the Miami Heat. What are some of your favorite moments or favorite series that you got to see over the run?
I mean, I'll start with the obvious one. 2 30-point triple-doubles in the same game. I mean, it's just an absolute absurdity. The joy of this play, there's many joys. This was a very joyful experience for the Nuggets. In fact, I don't know that it could have been more joyful. If you think about, I don't know that there was a timeline for this season that was brighter than the one we got when you consider every box that could have been checked got checked. Literally every single one of them. They could run the gauntlet for the next couple of years. We won't have a playoffs is this rewarding where it's just like, wow, we get to take every victory possible. But one of them that I like from a basketball standpoint and why maybe the thing we were right about that is the coolest is that the playoffs really are about what do you do well, what can teams take away from you, and then what's left once all those things are taken away. The Nuggets, teams guarded them different in every single game. Every series, it was like, all right, let's try this. Let's try that. Let's try this. Nothing worked. They just went through 4 rounds of the playoffs and nothing worked. And that game where both of them had 30-point triple-doubles was a lot of, okay, we can't stop Jokic, but we have a plan to take away their shooters. We're not going to let the ball get popping, and we think we can bother Murray. And they did in game 2. But you come back, you some things adjust, and by the time, was it game 4, the 2 30-point triple-doubles? Was it game 3?
Game 3.
Game 3. So you come back in game 3, Murray clearly solves what was ailing them. But they still think, well, let's just contain it to those 2. And those 2 put up an offensive clinic for the ages to stop a defense that was dead set on trying to stop them. To me, that's what's so cool. They solved every equation and didn't just solve it. They solved it to historic proportions.
I'll start. I have a couple of moments I'm really going to remember. I think for me, Jamal Murray's "We're ready for this" in Game 1 of the Suns. That's like, I think that's maybe the number one thing that I'm going to remember just from the emotion of Jamal, the declaration on that stage. You remember the tweets coming into that game? Like Mark Spears, who used to cover the Nuggets, being like, yeah, we'll find out if they're for real or not. And like, the Nuggets evaporating that team in game 1, and everyone went like everyone in like that I follow online was like, oh shit, the Nuggets are for real. Like that was the moment that everyone went like, oh, okay, like they are way better than we kind of thought. And being that ready for that moment and to have blitzed them like that, and the emotion that Jamal let out in that moment, and for him to like the amount of just intensity, and the arena also, which that was a big thing for me this season, was how great Ball Arena was like, that was just it was an entirely different level than I've ever seen it. And that to me was one of the apex moments, was their reaction when Jamal hits that 3 and him screaming, we're ready for this. The other one for me is the Sombor shuffle over Davis. The Mike Brain bang Jokic, like that kind of moment to remember. And the level, because the one that he hit when the clock was running down, like Davis's look back at him, okay, but if you go back and watch the Sombor step back in 4, Davis's look at him just like, will you please stop taking my soul? Like, I'm asking you, please. Like the level of helplessness that Anthony Davis felt in that moment, I think was really incredible. And then
that's going to be the iconic moment, by the way. I think in 20 years, whenever you ask whoever will remember this run outside of Denver, that'll be the thing they'll say. They'll be like, I just remember Yoke hitting a shot at the buzzer. And it was a clincher. That was a series clincher.
The appreciation for AG in game 3, for how well he played, or in game 4, I'm sorry, for how well he played in that game with 27 points, to see him up on the podium and to have that moment in the sun for everyone appreciating his contributions. And then in the locker room, seeing Jeff Green, Ish Smith, and DeAndre Jordan taking pictures with Larry O'Brien together, spraying each other with champagne. Those are the moments that I think I will remember most from this run.
Agreed.
I think here I'm going to do my Ben Gulliver impression here. I think you guys are missing like the easiest option. Game 7, Celtics Sixers had an opportunity to put it away and then have this massive opportunity for Joel Embiid, the reigning MVP, to really step up and put on a show on the national stage to defile all the narratives and just do it. No, I think the juxtaposition between how Nikola Jokic handled the pressure this year and how everybody else seemed to handle the pressure this year, there was no player alive that could do what Nikola Jokic just did. And the way that he rose to the occasion consistently, game after game after game, he didn't have a bad game in these playoffs. And so much, like I think you could point to every single other great player, especially in the modern era, and talk about how they had their down moments. And Jokic has had his down moments in the playoffs before, but in this playoff run, this was the absolute best that we've ever seen him. And the level that he got to consistently game after game after game and delivering in these clutch moments was so important. That's one that I'm going to remember. I'm going to remember game 2, Matt, actually, where they allow 87 points to the Phoenix Suns in the second round. As that was a Christian Brown game. That was a Jeff Green game. That was an Aaron Gordon and Bruce Brown and KCP game where offense doesn't work for Denver. Offense wasn't going to get it done. They had to get it done defensively. And then in game 5 against Miami, you could say the exact same thing where it was defense, it was the crowd, it was grittiness, and it was this toughness that the veterans brought, that it didn't just include the flashy offense that I think the Nuggets had developed a reputation as. They had to get gritty. They had to get tough. And they absolutely did that, and were the toughest team by far in the playoffs this year and in the NBA this year. It was very, very impressive to see.
Well, my favorite moment from the Denver Nuggets playoff run, let's list. The first one is Jokic destroys all narratives. That was a great one.
That wasn't a moment. That was a series of moments. I think there was 20 games. That was 20 moments.
I think you've already broken the rules on this, Swipa.
I'm not going to lie. I think one of the best ones for sure, and I saw Adam talk about this, game 4 of the finals, Jokic's defense, that entire game was maybe the best I've ever seen. Like, better than I ever thought he could do. I mean, he legitimately was – I think he had – that was the game where he had,
11 deflections.
Yeah, 23, 12, and 4. And they said, you joined Tim Duncan and I think it was LeBron and I think it was Kevin Durant for one of the greatest stat lines ever. He said 23 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, and like, 3 blocks, 3 steals. You know what I mean? Like what he did to Bam Adebayo that entire series on both ends was just was incredible. And I love that Jamal Murray was able to put away all the allegations the entire run, but especially that Lakers series, 32.5 points per game on 50, 40, 90 in the Western Conference Finals. That's incredible. That's incredible. And they had Bando, they had Dennis Schroeder, they had all these defenders, and they said, he's not going to do what he did to the Suns. He outdid what he did.
Hold on that point, because this is the thing: is they didn't just win, the narratives, but halfway through the playoffs, people just accepted that Jamal Murray was the greatest non-All-Star in the history of the NBA. That's not like he's playing a little better than we thought. It's, oh my God, he's so good that we're only halfway through the playoffs and we've already destroyed our own narratives about him and are rewriting them. That's what was so crazy about this run.
Adam, he had 53 points in 3 quarters between the fourth quarter of game 2 and then the first half of game 3. 53 points. It was unbelievable. It's obviously extremely rewarding for me, but I think Nuggets fans that's stuck by Jamal even when the torn ACL happened and you see a couple of playoff runs go down the drain for that exact reason. The actual reward was being able to see him deliver on the biggest stage and having that vindication, knowing that was something that could have happened, but because you had to wait for it, it was that much sweeter. And being able to do it with your guys, even if they went through trials and tribulations, was as sweet as nectar of the gods.
Right. And then another one, because Matt brought up AG. Going into the Suns series, a majority of people had picked the Suns because of their pull-up shooting and pick and roll and all this other stuff. Aaron Gordon held Kevin Durant to 38% as the closest defender over the course of that entire run. In 6 games, 38%. Aaron Gordon went through Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, who had a good series versus him, and then Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and then LeBron, and then Jimmy Butler. Remember when he signed that deal, that 4-year, $92 million extension? People said he was overpaid. He's an overrated defender. He became one of the best two-way players in the NBA over the course of one run and completely solidified himself as a stopper when it mattered most. And so I think Aaron Gordon's presence and even his post-game conferences, what he was saying about Murray, what he was saying about Jokic, what he was saying about the culture, the love that he got from the city, him walking through the streets in his game-worn NBA final jerseys in Atlanta, in Denver, man, it was just great. I just think the idea of the Nuggets not just being embraced by the city, but everybody on the team seemed to embrace the city of Denver. Watching Jokic at the parade, I'm effing glad that I'm here. All that stuff. And then obviously just everybody, man. And Michael Malone, I'll wrap it up here. Michael Malone being the 4th longest tenured NBA coach and then coming away with a dominant coaching performance in all 4 rounds. Matt,
the people in the back.
Remember, Matt, when you said that if he didn't make an NBA final, there's a chance he could get fired.
Yes.
Well, not only did he beat those allegations, he outcoached Monty Williams. He outcoached Darvin Ham, and then he went down and he outcoached Eric Spoelstra in the NBA final. And then talked about it. And then talked about it afterwards. So
got that tattoo to solidify it, man.
Facts, man. Yeah, Michael Malone he's full stop. This is the best team in Denver Nuggets history, and it's solidified, which is great.
I love when somebody brought up, though, I just have to bring it up. Jokic's game 1 versus the Lakers.
Yeah, man.
Guys,
jeez.
People are going to forget this, but going into that series, it was billed as the best defensive big versus the offensive big. Yeah. And by halftime, it was like, throw the towel! Throw the towel! That was the game where, Jokic's Phoenix series was just an all-timer, but there was one caveat left, and it didn't even make it a half before everyone was like, okay, the caveats are all gone. Nobody can guard him.
Look, I have strong feelings about Anthony Davis.
No.
I had strong feelings about Anthony Davis. They were all validated by that series. Jokic in that series, there should be an emergency vote for the NBA top 75 to get him out and put Joker in because of that series. Like it was an annihilation. And in AD's defense, like that's as good as you can do.
Because he ain't top 75. Like that's like it's pretty clear like what is and what isn't. And I remember like Nick Wright, he was mad at me for even like considering the idea that the NBA would be making a mistake by not putting Jokic on the top 75 just a couple of years ago. And look at how funny that is now.
For the guys here, like it's really validating. Like this was a very extremely validating run for the four of us in particular. Like Adam's belief in what Jokic could be was all proven accurate. Like it was just proven out. Like everything Adam has said about him offensively, defensively, impact, efficiency, all of it. Best player in the league, all of it. Jamal, Ryan's longstanding belief in Jamal through absolutely everything was validated. Swipa's talk about the defense, about what it was capable of, it all came to fruition. And my belief that Jeff Green would hit a single three-pointer in a key playoff game was validated. And so, no, mine would be the Malone talk that like.
Matt, did you see the meme of Frodo putting the ring finally into the mountain? That's what I felt from you when Jeff Green hit that shot in Game 5. By the way,
it's done. It's done. So yeah, like I think, like it was this, and that's why I've been like very keyed on like just enjoy this moment and don't get wrapped up in the dynasty talk, which we should talk about now. Is that I'm just of the belief I'm like. Look, you may win other championships, but they're not going to be as sweet as this one. They're not going to be as validating as this one. They're not going to be as rewarding for this one. They might. How would they possibly be better than this, Mahrez? How would it be better than this?
I'm just saying they're the gift that keeps on giving. I don't know. I'm with you. I said that earlier, that I don't think they'll ever be able to top this. But at the same time, man, I don't know.
I look forward to having the question as to which of my fingers with the rings on them is going to be the most fun. It's going to be the most enjoyable. Yeah, baby.
And then to close off this section, then we'll get into the dynasty. For you all, what do you make of? I phrased that really funny, by the way. Possible dynasty. What do you all make of Jokic's and Jamal Murray's ascension since this whole thing has kind of ended?
I mean, look, I think the fact that where Jamal is on the ringer list talks about it. I don't know. Like, I'll be honest. I don't know what to expect from Jamal going forward. Like, I just don't. I don't know if he returns, if he goes back to regular season Jamal and then just does this again in the playoffs. Like, we are starting. I will say this: we're starting to see more of the 16 game guys have a little bit more of a pattern than we used to. Where I think Jimmy's another example of this. Honestly, when he's fully healthy, of guys that like are like they're good in the regular season, and you get to the playoffs and you're like that dude, right? I think Jamal is on that list. Like there are 16 game players and there are 82 game players, and Jamal's a 16 gamer, and you're always going to prefer those because there's a lot of guys that even if you can win with them in the 16 games, it makes it a lot harder. Jamal makes your chances better in 16 games. And so I think that like, that's gonna be an interesting thing to kind of consider. I mean, look, Nikola, everyone has said that he's definitively the best player in the league. Like everyone says that except for Mark Jones. Like even Nick Wright crowned him. He's there.
No, Nick Wright did not.
Rick
he did. Like, there's a first day clip of him being like, yes, now he is there. He was like, you have to win the championship, but once you do it, you're the guy. So he said that he's there. So even Nick Wright did. There is a lot of conversation about this being an all-time dominant run, one of the greatest we've ever seen, because it was. And there's a lot of conversation about him being an all-time great. Two MVPs, a championship, and a finals MVP. You cannot get more certified than that. You just can't. You can't get more certified than multiple MVPs, a championship, and a finals MVP.
One of 9 players ever.
So I don't know. I don't have the ability to put much more perspective on Nikola. Like, I don't know what else to say.
Well, there's one more, Matt. There's one you're missing. That's actually the funniest one of them all.
What's that?
And that is
Defensive Player of the Year.
Well, that part, the defense. I will say, people have come around on the defense. You know the narrative. This is the concession. It's actually as good as I can get. I can't remember who I heard it for, so I apologize if a main podcaster. But somebody said he does the best given his tools, meaning he's the best defender he can be, it's just now his athleticism maybe limits him, which is a real concession because it's like, hey, we're no longer saying he's a bad defender. It's just like, okay, there's limitations to what any person given his body could do or whatever, which is to me, I'm like, all right, whatever. That sounds like a fair enough concession. But the funny one to me is this one. Nobody cares about the Nuggets. Nobody likes watching Jokic. They're all boring. That to me is the funniest narrative to fall because people fell in love with this team during this run. And I have a feeling that the NBA is looking at all of their metrics and across social and views and everything else and going, wait, is this team fun? Hold on a second. Is this actually like a marquee team? We screwed up.
Wow, they win every year. They dunk a lot. They make cool shots. They make great passes. Like it should be a pretty straightforward thing. Jokic he's gonna, like you say it all the time. He does something that makes you laugh every single day, like every single game. That's gonna happen. So that's a fun one. I do think, like, look, back to the duo talk. I called them Kobe and Shaq back in 2019. Like that happened. Whether it was actually going to be that, or whether they were going to be. Whether they're going to be that level, I don't think that Jamal is on Kobe's level, and he may never get to that point. But when you talk about the actual guys that can bring that level of competitiveness as a second option, like there's just about like nobody else in the NBA that can do what he just did. And to do it with Nikola and to make an all-time great duo, that's cool. Like that's just objectively a cool part of NBA history that people are going to remember for a long, long time.
And Ryan, to your point, you know how crazy it is. Now people are asking, because now some people are trying to denigrate Joker by Jamal, but that to me just speaks to how great Jamal was. That when's the last time a second option was averaging 26, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds on a run, making the shots that he was doing, 32.5 points in the Western Conference Finals and all that stuff. For me, watching Jamal go from he was a bubble merchant and a fraud to now Jason Temp, top 15-ish player in the NBA, that is asinine to me. And I think that just speaks to the dilemma that Jamal Murray put everybody in over the course of this run, that even if you try to single cover me, I'm going to cook you. You double team me, I'm going to cook you. One of, 4 players now? 4 players to average 20 and 10 in the NBA Finals? Or no, 3 players in 4 different tries. That's crazy. Jamal went from an elite scorer in the playoff, went to an elite playmaker. Go ahead, Ryan.
By the way, those guys are LeBron James, Magic Johnson, and Michael Jordan is what we're talking about here. Right. Those were the 3 players that you're talking about that did that in a finals.
Right. So just incredible. And then now everybody, Chris Broussard, I mean, people I respect, the conversation they're having about Joker. Top 15? Top 20 at the least?
Yeah.
Like,
no,
they're saying
Nick Wright's the one that has him the lowest still, which I just love.
Right.
I just love it.
Right. Yeah, and he just put him on his last 50 years, put him at 20, where he had Luka Doncic at, because he was projecting, by the way. That's a whole other story, though. But, again, even now, like, people are saying, is Jokic going to end up his career, like, how many years before he overtakes Kevin Durant all time? That's the conversation he's moved in. And Kevin Durant
it might be one.
But I'm saying Kevin Durant is considered a top 14, top 12 player ever. So one more year from Joker, they're basically like,
yeah, no way Jokic would have won championships with the 2017 Warriors. No way he would have pulled that off.
Yeah, so all that, and then even they're asking, when's the last time you've seen a run this dominant? They said 2018 LeBron, 2000 Shaq, Curry didn't have a year like this, Durant didn't have a year like this. They're putting him up there saying him and Hakeem in 95, him and Michael Jordan in 92. This is where he's entered, which just goes to show you that averaging 30, 13, and 9.5 over the course of a playoff run versus a bunch of top 75 players and all-stars and all NBAs is quite impressive. So they're just solidified. And I just think as the year goes on, and we're going to talk about this now, y'all, let me know what y'all think. Is there a dynasty on the table, which is 3 or more typically in NBA history? Do you think there's a dynasty potentially on the table for the Denver Nuggets? Again, let me tell you, Jokic is 28, Gordon's 27, Murray's 26, Porter's 24.
Matt?
No.
You don't think there's a chance they have a dynasty?
I think there's a chance. I think the conversation is one that you should have once you get to 2.
Oh, sure.
I think
okay.
Like my thing is just that I've seen so many great teams that I really believed in never make it, and making it there changes the equation. Like you get there once, it actually is. It's harder to repeat, but it's easier to get back there in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years. Your guys know what it takes now. Like you understand how to do it. You're no longer intimidated by going. Like I remember one of my favorite things for this was the talk about, well, now the Nuggets have got to go into LA. They've got to go into crypto.
Right.
Title Town.
Oh no. Oh, they're gonna get clapped at by people with too much plastic surgery.
Oh man. Wow.
Oh, man.
Like, get out of here. The Nuggets have gone to Portland for playoff games. The Nuggets have gone to San Antonio for playoff games.
Matt just turned it up to 11.
Yeah. So look, the Nuggets can do this again, and I understand the classic Matt thing, but I will my thing is I think you should enjoy this now, and I think when you start talking about projecting, it for me it kind of takes away from enjoying this moment. I get why it's fun to be excited about it. I know, Mahrez, because you're feeling yourself as much as any.
No, I'm just saying it doesn't take away from it at all. My take is, if they only win one. If this is the only one they win, I'm going to get more mileage out of it than Doc Rivers in the 2008 Celtics.
Yeah.
This one to me already counts for 3 because you lost 2 years of Murray. So it's already a dynasty.
You hear what Zach Lowe said, Adam? You said they might have won one already by this point.
Oh, I love this. Matt says it how it is. No, I mean, you're 100% right, though, about – and I really give Michael Malone credit because I do think there can be you're a dog chasing cars, and then once you catch it, what do you do now? I've always wanted the Nuggets to win an NBA championship. The era is not over, and they already have it. So I think there can be this empty sense of, well, we did the thing we were trying to do. Now what? And I love that Michael Malone immediately said, let's run it back. And he did use the word dynasty one time when he was talking about Pat Riley's quote about the steps you take to get there, and then he ended it with dynasty. But what I appreciate about Michael Malone is what Matt Moore is doing right now, which was saying, just run it back. Stop there. Don't worry about it. Like, take everything one step at a time because you don't want to live too far in the future. You just want to live right now, which is, yes, enjoying the moment. But I think Nuggets fans have enjoyed the moment, man. It's been very enjoyable.
For sure.
But also this idea of like, you know what, though? Look at the roster. Everybody's coming back except for maybe not Bruce. Why not build off of this? And that's the coolest part of this whole thing.
I mean, look, I think I want to be clear. So, like, there are a number of ways in which, like, there's one-offs. So, like, the Mavericks – they destructed that team after they won.
They traded Tyson Chandler for no reason.
Yeah, like Cuban melted down that team trying to do a galaxy brain type thing.
And actually, the last 3, right? Not the Bucks, but before that, you've got the Lakers who ended up making the trade the next year, right? Mm-hmm. So they immediately broke up their team. You had the Raptors that immediately broke up their team. And even before that, you had the Warriors that had lost Clay in the playoffs and then lost Kevin Durant to free agency. So 3 of the last 4, they ended in a way that was like, okay, there's no point in even coming back.
Yeah.
What I will say, though, is that the Bucks are actually a great example of putting the cart before the horse when it comes to a dynasty where they just have Chris Middleton get injured, or they just have Giannis get injured in the year after, and like,
or they just didn't play the Atlanta Hawks again in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, that sort of helps as well.
I love it. Bring it.
The age, they did beat some good teams. And the age thing too here matters too, where like the Nuggets are younger, so they do have a wider window. One thing to me is like the Spurs comps have been kind of in play. They are like that Spurs dynasty for 20 years. They were in contention, like from 1999 until 2017.
In many ways, more impressive.
That team had a chance at a championship every single year, and the Nuggets stretch won't be that long. But like, if you told me that they won 3-6, 3-5, 3-8, that would make sense to me. Like, I'd be like, yeah, that kind of tracks. Versus like when we talk about dynasty, we talk about the idea of like these 3-peats or 3 out of 5 and like those types of things. I think there's a capacity for them to be a dynasty in terms of winning titles over an extended period of time because of the front office, because of how great Jokic and all these things. But I also am just like, look, bad stuff's going to happen. Like that's just part of the NBA life. Is you're going to have years where the bad stuff happens, and you need to be able to plan for that. I think a key is how the Nuggets respond to that as a group between AG and the last thing is the CBA is structured against this. Like the league has built a collective bargaining structure to prevent good teams with lots of talent at the top from being able to stay together. So there's a lot of ways it can go sideways. I'm not going to sit here and say like it can't happen. When I said no, it's like more of that is I should have said I don't expect or think the dynasty is likely, but I think multiple titles is likely.
Well, I think the only one with a similar proxy to the Nuggets, though, would be the Chicago Bulls. Because remember, they had Pippen and Jordan. They drafted. Then they got Ron Harper. They went from Horace Grant. Then they got obviously Dennis Rodman, and then obviously Steve Kerr, John Paxson. But they had the two players that were set in that made it a repeat process over an 8-year period, basically, with Jordan and Pippen. Then you get to the Spurs, it's a 20-year period. But then again, David Robinson gets hurt. They draft Tim Duncan and walk into another championship versus the New York Knicks in a shortened NBA year. And then obviously after that, they dominate. But then even LeBron, like that dynasty, he went to multiple teams to do it. And then the Warriors got Kevin Durant. Right after they won one, they got smoked by LeBron, came chasing back 3-1, and then they get Kevin Durant. And then
are the Warriors a dynasty? Are you a dynasty truther where it's got to be the 3 in a row or 3 of 4 or something like that?
I think I think they're a dynasty because even though they didn't win the 16, like I think that's another thing about it is I actually think I'm less of a truther because I'm also like, look, if you win multiple titles and you have multiple years where you had like a real shot and you won 55 plus games, like that 2016 team, it goes down as one of the biggest failures ever. They also won the most games in NBA history.
You're right.
So it's like if you take the total span of 2015 to 2022, 4 titles, yeah, I think they're a dynasty.
I agree with that, by the way. Like you're always looking up at that team. And I think the great thing about where the Nuggets are right now is there's a lot of teams that are looking up at the Nuggets and think, oh crap, like that could be something. I think it has a little bit of a different feel than maybe the Lakers or the Bucks or even the Warriors this last year. Like I think it has a little bit of a different feel than some of those teams where it was a pretty weird time in the NBA. Denver for the first time, like I think they're one of those teams that a lot of other groups could say, yeah, they're going to be around for a long time.
Well, now people are talking about Ryan, like you need more bigs. Everybody's saying now, like you need to, if you're going to go to the Western Conference, you need to have multiple bigs on the roster to deal with Joker. And so it's almost having the Shaq effect, right, in the 2000s. So, we'll see. I do think that situationally they're in the best place of any team that's been in the last couple of years. Again, I think the Bucks run was really good. But again, granted, James Harden and them and Kyrie got hurt in the second round, and then they played against Trae Young, and obviously then they played against the Suns team, and and then they obviously had an older roster, and then Chris Middleton got hurt, and then Giannis had some offensive lapses that kind of cost him, and they ended the second round in the 7-game series versus the Celtics, and obviously Steph Curry and that roster got older, Draymond and some punching Jordan Poole. So yeah, there's all kinds of things that can happen for sure. So you need luck, and you need some real continuity to get that done, and that takes a lot of effort. So for sure.
Where do we want to go from here?
Are there any last final thoughts on anything you have from the finals run? Upcoming summer things, any idea what might happen tomorrow, anything at all?
My only thing is there's a lot of different ways a team can win a title and can do, when you start to get to the top, you're splitting hairs about great experiences. I just think this really was the best one, like the best type of one. Like it was with the guys that you're rooting for the most, the Jokic's, the Murrays, the Michael Porters, the same coach, all that continuity. And it's just so rare that you get this. I always hoped the Nuggets would win one during the Jokic era. I wasn't always confident they would, but you kind of got a sense that they would, maybe there's going to be a coaching change here. And, maybe you have to make a Murray move. Just something was going to have to happen major in a way that really made it sting. And look, Gary, Monte, Barton, those were all guys I loved. And it sucks that they didn't get to be a part of it. But for the most part, getting to follow a through line that lasted 8 years and led us to this point, it's so rare in sports. We might see more championships across our favorite teams here in town, but to get one that was the way we most wanted it to go, beating the Lakers in a sweep, by the way, the first sweep in franchise history, changing every narrative, literally flipping the deck on every single one and just going one after the other en route to winning this title. It feels like I'm in a simulation.
It's going to go down, I think, as one of the all-time great. Not, I think it's going to go down as one of the all-time great Denver teams of all time too, right? Like you're going to look back at probably the first Broncos championship year with Elway, and then Avs first title.
96.
Not the first one. The second one was more meaningful, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, because they just came over from Canada at that point.
Yeah, it was so new. It was so new.
I will ask my wife, who's the expert on all things.
He had the heartbreak against the Red Wings and everything else leading into it. Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
And then this one. Like I just think it's gonna be really rewarding. I think that in NBA history, this will probably be. I will say this from talking to media at the finals. This team is going to be remembered well. There may be attempts from TV talking heads if luck doesn't go their way, to move them down. But everyone that covered this team was like, this team's fucking great. Like everyone was like, just from a basketball perspective, watching this team, the reporters that joined the beat as it went on, Young Masuk, Tony Jones from The Athletic, those guys were all like, this team's great. Like this team is great. And it's going to be remembered as such, which I think is pretty cool.
I think another great feat of this, and I told him this, converting Tony Jones into a Jokic as the best player in the world guy.
Yep.
That's a huge accomplishment.
Yep.
It's very cool. And just to see it all, like this was something that they talked about back in training camp. This was something that it developed over the course of a long period of time. And there were, I think the common phrasing that they were using at that point was don't talk about it, be about it. And this team was about it for the periods of time that it mattered. And October and November, not a big deal. March and April, not a big deal from a regular season perspective. But I think everybody that was paying attention could see that this team was legit during the times that it mattered. And I think it'll probably change how people view Nikola, Jamal, Michael Malone, Michael Porter, all these guys. They're gonna change how they are viewed for the rest of time, and it's only up from here, folks. I really do believe that.
By the way, somebody all just mentioned it, but the peak championship moment for me in Colorado sports, outside of this one's for Pat from John Elway, was when Joe Sakic did not raise the cup and gave it to Ray Bork. And Ray Bork, I know, but listen, the reason I did it is because it seems like he actually saying it is pronounced Sakic, not Joe.
Yeah, you're actually right about this. No. Nobody ever converted, so it just went to Sakic.
So that's why I changed it. It's like the Jokic thing. Like I'm trying to get it correct, right?
It's more like Nikola. Like his name has just become Nikola, even though it's actually Nikola.
Right. So when Ray Bork raised that trophy and you heard the crowd go crazy, like that for me is still like one of the best moments of all time, college sports.
Actually, you were asking last thing. I'm with you, by the way. That was an awesome moment. But one last thing with you on all of this. I don't actually know who the biggest winner is. I mean, Jokic going from a not top 75 all-time guy to like the 15th greatest player by most people's rankings. That's pretty big. Murray going from Zach Lowe said, I've never regretted, not once, including this year, not putting Murray on my ballot for All-Star. Like, don't regret it. To now, is he the 15th best player in the NBA? You know, that rise is huge. Aaron Gordon, by the way, I think he's going to get all defensive votes next year, which I think he should have all along, but nobody talked about him that way. And then everybody watched this and said, how many defenders could have done what he done? I don't know if any could have. He might have been the best role player defender possible for the matchups that they faced. And then lastly, Michael Malone, who, yes, somebody wanted us to talk about it, so I'll mention it. He did get a tattoo, which is the most hilarious.
We got like 8 comments about it. There's like, go back to the chat. There's like 8 comments.
Everybody wants us to talk about it because it's the funniest thing that's ever happened in Denver sports. Coach went out and got a tattoo of the Nuggets. Now, I actually think it's the number one cockiest thing he's ever done. Number 2 was when he called out the Rui adjustment every single media availability between games 1 and game 2. When the Nuggets were only up 1 game, and he just started writing checks, like knowing his team was going to cash him. That was the cockiest thing until he did this. And when you said, Matt, do you see a dynasty? You know, I had heard before the playoffs begun that the Nuggets really wanted the Suns. that the Nuggets were like, that's a matchup we like. And I remember thinking that's a matchup I was worried about. So when they said that, I go, okay, they have a confidence. They must know something I don't, that they have this level of confidence. Michael Malone getting a tattoo like that ups my personal odds of them repeating this like 10%. I'm like, Malone is feeling confident.
Bro,
Wait, so you're saying Mike Shanahan doesn't have a tattoo of TD doing a salute?
I wouldn't be surprised if he does, like, next year, reveals that he actually got 2 tattoos last year. One of them that says 2024 champs, a la Jason Terry.
Mike Budenholzer got fired after 2 years after winning the championship. Same thing with Frank Vogel. Like, that dude is putting it all on the line.
But I'll say this, that's the thing, though. I think is this is a big, because he talked about how before the finals, wanting to get the other guys back, because this moment isn't just about this team; it's about all Nuggets.
Yeah,
like Malone has because there hasn't been a real steward of Nuggets history in the organization, and that's a separate problem we could get into. But like Malone has taken it on himself to like raise the profile of the franchise, of like this team's history. Because we operate in such a, like everyone does, a superstar in a player-driven space, and coaches care about teams. Like they always care about teams first. And Malone's been in this league for so long, and this one's his. Like he may get fired and go somewhere else, and he may go somewhere else and win championships. This one will always be his. Like he'll always be the greatest coach in Nuggets history.
Yeah.
Like this one is his. It belongs to him.
Matt, somebody on Twitter I saw said he's going to look like Birdman by the time the Jokic era ends. 5 more championships and he's just covered.
Yeah, somebody else in the chat was talking about him coming into training camp with the Jokic face tattoo, which I thought was
oh my god.
Get out of here.
By the way, y'all, this is another point. The Celtics and the Clippers are currently looking at trading for Kristaps Porzingis, so that would be very interesting, especially for the Celtics. But
who
we'll
cares?
see.
The Denver Nuggets got a title.
But look, this has been a great episode, y'all. First off, I want to say I appreciate y'all even doing this. This is our 5th episode that we've done this, and I don't know. That sounds like good luck. So we definitely need to do this before the season starts.
Going into the draft, is this our good luck for the draft?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe Victor Wembanyama somehow ends up a Nugget.
You are a Denver Nugget.
An accidental fax machine hiccup like in 2012 with the Broncos, and Victor gets into the Nuggets. But yeah, y'all are great. Matt, a lot of respect for you. Been a fan of your work for years. Obviously, Adam, man, like been a DNVR fan for years, man. I mean, just great job. And then obviously Ryan, I told you, man, you have a golden podcast voice. So, man, I appreciate every single one of you.
Thanks,
you all
man.
are great.
Nuggets ASMR with Ryan Blackburn.
I've been told that I put people to sleep at night. So that's exactly how we're doing it now.
Hey, and I love everything that Swipa does. It's so great, such a great voice in Nuggets fandom.
Yeah,
he's so important to that community. I can't wait until next. Let's see, when does the season start? It starts October.
It's like 5 weeks, but
5 weeks,
it's 6. So there's 4. I gotta wait 4 months until the next complaint from him about Jeff Green. So I'm waiting for that moment to be exciting.
That's just coming in the preseason, bro.
No, he's going to be a great Udonis Haslem for the Denver Nuggets. I can't wait. So, yeah, y'all, this has been great. Y'all, y'all are the best fan base in the NBA. No problem, man. Like, appreciate y'all support. Y'all support Locked On. Y'all support DNVR. Y'all support Mile High Sports. Y'all support Swipa with this digital camera that I have and this terrible microphone half the time. Like, y'all are mad loyal. So, obviously, we appreciate y'all from the start of the Nuggets era with Michael Malone and Jokic to now. So, this is great. Shout out to Serbia, apparently having the greatest run of all time. So, it's been great.
We love it, man. Thank you guys. Really appreciate all the love, and just make sure to support all the channels on this one that are putting this one out. We're doing a lot of coverage. Like the grind never stops, folks. So we'll keep it going for the draft and free agency, and hopefully get out of here at some point after that.
Locked On Nuggets will be back on Thursday morning previewing the NBA draft for you guys, as well as the latest in free agency talk, and then I'll have a post-game or post-draft show talking about whatever they do with that pick solo, and then Adam and I'll be back on Friday morning to break it down together.
Show
Thanks,
y'all.
guys.
See y'all later.